Hello there. This is the video for the autobiography letter and misconceptions assignments that are part of Module 1. If we go down to the assignment here, first I'll say a brief bit about the autobiography letter. In previous videos, I've touched really lightly upon it, but the main reason is because it's really actually very straightforward, the assignment. The assignment is to write a letter to your cooperating teacher in your practicum classroom. Now, when you click on the assignment, what you will notice is all of my assignments will be set up this way, where there are assignment details, any documents that you need to be linked to, or any documents that you might want to use as a template for the assignment will be here in this area that you see, which I call the assignment details. By the way, it makes me crazy on Canvas that they give you this little tiny window. So if you click here in the corner, this window will stretch for you, and it'll make it a little bit bigger, and you'll be more able to read. I think at a wider glance at what they have, what I have planned for you. So if you read the assignment details, you're basically going to see that you're writing a letter to the cooperating teacher, introducing yourself, first of all, and thanking them for allowing you into their classroom and for being giving of their time and their students with you. The other thing that it does is it's going to tell them enough about you to let them sort of get a feel for who they are inviting into their classroom. So there's essentially those two parts to the letter. You definitely want to make it one page. I know that you can read, so I'm going to let you read the instructions and just follow those. The last thing that I will point out is there are two example letters here. The reason why I give those example letters is because I say something a couple times in the description for the assignment, and that is that the letter should be professional, polished, and positive. And those three things, I think, are captured very well in these two example letters. They're both professionally written. The formatting for the letter is in a professional writing format, where you have your contact information at the top, you have a proper greeting, you have the letter in professional format, and then you have a salutation at the end. And that's typical of this type of letter when you write one professionally like this. So notice that about the two letters. The other thing I want you to notice is that they're well written. When I say polished, I'm really referring to grammar is correct. There's not spelling errors. There's nothing missing from the letter, just from a well-written perspective. So that's the polished part. And then the last one, positive in its tone. You know, sometimes we all know this, that texts, emails, and letters are easy to be, it's easy to misconstrue the stuff that you read in those, because something might be said that you wonder, what was the tone of that? Or what exactly were they getting at with that? You want to make sure then when you write this letter that you are overtly positive, that you take every step possible to be almost overly positive in your tone so that nothing could be misconstrued. And that's all I have on that. If you have questions regarding the autobiography letter, or if you're one of those people who aren't in a practicum classroom this semester, then you can get with me and we'll handle those on a one-off basis. But we do have plans. I have plans for those that actually other students have helped me sort of figure out what some of the different ideas that we can do if you're not in the practicum classroom. So I'm going to go back really quickly here to the module. So that's the autobiography letter. So the only thing left after that is the student misconceptions interview. And the student misconceptions interview, pardon me, looks like this. There are two parts to that interview. So if you click on the link to open up the assignment, again, you have the assignment details right here. I'm going to stretch that a little bit to open it up. And you will notice, excuse me again, that when you look at the assignment details, there's a brief explanation of what you're doing. Essentially, you're interviewing a student or students. Hopefully you can get a couple students to do this with. You're going to interview them on a chosen Common science misconception. So the first thing that I would recommend you do is, based off of your age group that you're working with, because some of these are appropriate for younger grades and some are appropriate for older grades. I'll let you figure that out though, because you might see something that I don't and think, you know what, I'd really like to do this one with a fourth grade class, because I know the class just a little bit, and I think that, you know, this living or non-living will be right up their alley. This is one that I kind of reserved for kindergarten and first grade, but you might see something different than I do. So look through these, figure out which one or ones you think go the best with the age group that you're working with. And then there's two parts to this first part. The first is, there is an article, pardon me, there's an article that goes along with this misconception, and it explains the basics of this misconception. What is the misconception? Why might kids have this misconception? What leads to them having it? And in some cases, how do we dispel it? So as a classroom teacher, what are some things that you can do to help dispel this misconception once you've drawn it out? So that's the article portion. You're going to want to read the article before you do the actual interview, where you're interviewing the kid or kids about that misconception. The reason why is this is a much richer product, and you will get a whole nother level of learning out of the experience if you have read the article first for that misconception. So I'm going to show you really quickly. I'm just going to take, for example, the living or non-living. I'm going to show you really fast what one of these articles looks like. And here you have the living or non-living article. And it's a pretty quick read. It's actually very enjoyable. I find it to be a really nice, enjoyable read. So if you read through this, it's going to tell you really what is the misconception there. Why do some kids have it and some kids don't? And what it's going to give you some insight into what you might be able to do as a teacher to help dispel those misconceptions, or work with kids, or draw out those misconceptions so that they can learn from them. And then the second part of the activity is, you need to actually do the interview with the kid. So if we click here, this says, is it living probe? Probe is another word for interview. So we use those two terms interchangeably. And the probe for the is it living interview looks like this. It's very easy. It's a one-pager. And basically, you just read the instructions and follow those. So at the top it says, listed below are examples of living, which includes once living, and non-living things. Put an X next to the things that could be considered living. So you're going to have a kid or kids read through this list and put an X by everything they think is living. Now, here's the fun part. There are words on here that clearly most, if not all, kindergartners are not going to know. Most kindergartners are not going to know what a molecule is. I don't know a kindergartner yet that is going to know really what mitochondria is, but you never know. It could happen one day where I or you run across a kid that actually knows what a molecule is, or a kindergartner that can kind of explain that to you. At the very least, they might know, no, I don't think that's a living thing. So have them read through the list for the words they need help with. You fill in the blanks, and then have them check what they think on whether it's living or non-living. So if they think that a molecule is a living thing after you briefly explain to them what it is, have them put an X there. Remember, there's 2 points that I want to bring up here. First of all, with kindergartners or first graders, definitely please don't assume that they can't read. Some of these words are really close to what we call sight words in literacy. And sight words are words that kids just know from sight before they can even read. So they don't even really know how to read, but most kids will learn before they can read what the word stop looks like. And that's because they see stop signs, and parents teach them those sight words because they're so visual and they're just part of our everyday lives. So some of these words like boy, son, those are very close to sight words for students. So some of those words they're going to know. Others on here they won't know. On the ones that they don't know, so this is the second key point. On the ones that they don't know, you want to make sure to scaffold the activity for them and sort of give them an idea of what that thing is without showing your hand on whether it's living or non-living. That's key, because you're going to make this awfully easy for them. You know, if you say that a molecule is part of, it's it's part of, I don't know how you would describe it, but if you said it's part of a car, cars are made of molecules and trees are made of molecules. They might not, they might think right away that's not a living thing. So make sure you're careful with that. Don't tip your hand. Then lastly, for this, you're going to ask them to explain their thinking, or what rule or reasoning did they use to decide if something could be considered living. I highly recommend have them write this out, no matter what grade they're in, even if they're in kindergarten. Definitely have them try their hand at writing this out. If they really can't write anything, then you go ahead and write out what they say, but kind of pull information out of them so you can get more information here. What I would do is I would always have them do the maximum amount of work possible before I intervened. Then, after they wrote something here, I might ask them questions to sort of fill in the blanks and give myself a little more detail to go on when I go to do the summary of this. So this is the first part of the assignment. You got to read the article that goes with your misconception that you choose, and then you've got to actually do the interview about that misconception with one or a group of kids. Oh, there's one last key. If you do one of these interviews with a group of kids, you got to make sure that you somehow isolate them or don't let them confound each other's answers. So if one of them knows most of the answers, he or she is going to end up giving the answers to the other kids if they think they're right, and you're not going to expose any of the misconceptions for you to actually see. So make sure you. It's really good if you can do the interviews with more than one student, but you got to make sure that you don't let them confound their answers. Okay, so that's the interview portion. Now, once you have done that, you will literally take a picture, a photo of the interview form that you fill out, and then you're going to upload that. I'm going to show you really quickly what one of those looks like. This is a student in my online class, and this is one of her filled out. Now, she actually filled everything out on this, but she would tell you that's because she was in a time crunch. She definitely wished that she had the student do a little more of it, but at that point she thought it was more important to get it done in a quality way with the time remaining that they had. So she filled this out, she asked questions, she got the student to tell her what the rule or the reasoning was for what they determined to be living, and she wrote those down here. You'll see she actually did 2 of these. So there's the picture of the second one, and these are ones that, again, that she did. I think she might have had the student do the check marks, because I noticed there were X's on the other one and there's check marks on this one, but this writing is definitely hers on both. So you can do that just like that if you want. When you're done with the interview, you will snap a picture of it with your cell phone or some other device. Maybe you could scan it if you have a printer that does that, and if you prefer to do it that way, and then you will upload this picture or pictures to the assignment in Canvas for credit for having done the interview. So that's it. That's the interview part of the assignment. The next part is the summary. And the summary looks like this. Let's go to the summary real quick. We'll click here for the summary. And the summary is very straightforward. There is a rubric for it, so I advise you to read through that. But then, if you look at the assignment details, it's very simple. It tells you that you're going to write a 2 to 3 paragraph explanation in 500 words or greater that addresses these things that I talk about here. Now, this works really well if you will read this article first. So there's a link to a second article. There's the article that you read before you do the misconceptions interview, and then there's an article that you read that's about misconceptions in general that you really need before you do the summary. Definitely the summaries are very different if someone doesn't read this article first, so make sure you read the article first. And let's go back, and I believe we are good to go. Once you have finished both of the misconceptions pieces, then you're ready to take quiz number 3 on student misconceptions in science. As always, if you have any questions arise, I'm available by phone, text, or email. Please hit me up, and we'll get whatever fixed that we need to get fixed. Have a good one.